You've booked your flights, planned the itinerary, and you have your accommodation and transportation options lined up. So what else could be missing from your DIY vacation planning? On this episode of Travel Planning Basics, I'm going to go over those minor details that you don't always think of, but they can be the difference between a well-executed, well-planned trip and a trip that doesn't even happen. Let's get into it. So the first area that we're going to look at is your entry requirements and documentation. What do I mean by that? Well, first things first, you need to know whether or not you can get into your destination country, and that's going to be part of the entry requirements. In some cases, you might need a visa, or even if you don't need a visa, some countries do require a travel authorization. So I believe, for example, there are European countries that will be implementing travel authorization for persons from non-visa required countries. And so you just want to make sure that there isn't some form of documentation or form that you need to fill out before you get there to allow you to enter the country. And speaking of documentation, I always recommend when going to another country that you have a digital copy of your passport should anything go wrong. You just always want to have that, and not just your passport, any additional documentation that was critical for your entry requirements. So if you have a visa, if you have a travel authorization, you definitely want to include those. Now, another type of documentation, so to speak, that you want to have is you should always check whether the destination that you're going to is a cash or card-based society. If they are predominantly cash-based, then I do recommend having some of that foreign currency with you upon arrival. Even if it's not all of the currency you're going to need, but having something might be helpful if it's going to be needed to pay your driver or tip if that's expected. So you just want to at least have a plan in place. And as it relates to currency, if you plan on using your card, because it is a card-based society and everything's digital, you might want to let your bank know that you will be traveling so that they don't sort of, turn off your card because of fraud or thinking that it's actually not you doing these purchases and transactions. So just to be safe, make sure you know whether you're going to need the local currency and it's a cash-based society, or if you're going to be using your card, and just ensure that you can, in fact, use your card abroad. The next bucket of items on the list is connectivity and navigation. So if you get to your location and you have zero connection from a digital perspective, good luck getting around. Good luck. So always ensure that you have an eSIM so that you're connected to the local network. And even if you don't and you plan on buying a SIM on arrival, that you have downloaded an offline version of the map of the area that you're in. I usually use Google Maps. Or that you have a translation app or tool. So all forms of getting and staying connected while you're there, and this is going to help you get around. So for example, when we were in Japan, we definitely took so much advantage of translation tools and translations apps. They're apps where you can take a picture. So we were taking pictures of Japanese characters and it would translate it for us. There was a particular incident of us trying to figure out how to use the washer dryer because that was all in Japanese characters. So again, it's just helpful to have those things ready if you have that type of trip. And finally, power and safety. So the power in question is ensuring that you have a power adapter so that when you get to your location, you can actually charge your phone and your digital devices. In addition to this, I would recommend always having a power bank, but my character flaw is that my phone is always perpetually less than 50%. So that's like a thing that I personally need to do. So power adapter, power bank, and then as it relates to safety, and this is applicable whether you're in a foreign country or not, I do recommend having like a first aid kit of some sort, and then just basic over-the-counter medication, specifically simple things like aspirin or charcoal tablets, because even if you don't get food poisoning, things might just upset you because they're new and foreign to your body. So I highly, highly recommend having charcoal tablets or some sort of like anti-diarrheal medication when you're traveling, and that's local or abroad, because you just never know. You're probably going to be trying new things. And then the final thing I'll touch on is travel insurance. So there are many, many options out there. Sometimes the airlines offer them. Your accommodation at Airbnb might offer some sort of travel insurance, but I highly recommend it because it's sort of like a blanket safety net for your trip, and you just never know what could go wrong. So if you need to cancel or there's some issue that arises, travel insurance is definitely something that's helpful to have in the event of just the unexpected happening. And I know that was supposed to be my final point, but another thing I feel as though people usually aren't aware about is if you're traveling abroad, I think there is sort of like this global requirement that for the length of your stay, your passport should not be expiring within 6 months. So not just from when you get there, but when you're expected to leave, your passport should not be expiring within the next 6 months. So that's a pretty broad window, but it's one of those minor details that could make or break your trip. So I hope those were helpful. If you have additional tips or additional things that you think about while traveling, please share them down below in the comment section. And as always, thank you for watching.